Charles Thomas Munger is one of the wealthiest people in the United States, with an incredible investing track record. Warren Buffett has identified Charlie Munger as his closest colleague and right-hand man. And Munger holds the position of vice chairman at Berkshire Hathaway, the multinational corporation Buffett controls. One of the finest investors of all time, Munger is now predicting a severe crash in the financial markets and the US economy. This may be a scary scenario to many, but you need not be alarmed. Want to find out why? Keep watching. The likelihood of a recession increases as inflation rises, according to a number of recent economic forecasts. This could lead to a rise in unemployment, wage costs, and interest rates. Recession is more likely to occur in the next 12 months, 47% chance now versus 30% in June. The National Bureau of Economic Research, or NBER, is the organization responsible for officially declaring recessions, which they loosely define as a major fall in economic activity that is spread out across the economy and that lasts for more than a few months. A rise in interest rates may increase monthly payments on consumer loans and credit cards with variable interest rates, the cost to finance a car, and possibly the cost of a mortgage. An increase of just 1% would have a very noticeable impact. Charlie Munger's predictions. If you want to be successful in anything, you need to obtain more value than you pay for. This is the concept of investment. Munger is of the opinion that the stock market has devolved into a speculative casino where gambling is done and has become separated from the fundamental values of many businesses. Because of this, bubbles are formed, which will inevitably burst. According to historical evidence, unchecked printing of currency would inevitably result in adverse financial effects in the long run. According to Munger, the fact that Japan has not been negatively affected by their own money printing may be an exception rather than the rule going forward into the future. Munger adds that the inflation that is occurring now is not the same as the inflation that Volcker fought against in the 80s, and that politicians do not appear to have the same resolve to endure that economic misery in order to combat inflation. It may have been okay with most people back then to tolerate Volcker to do everything necessary to get the inflation rate under control. It's different today, and likely that the current FED chair won't have the same amount of leeway. Munger mentioned what Plato thought took place in the early Greek city-state democracies. One person, one vote. If there's a lot of equality, then you will have demagogues, and demagogues will stir up the populace, and before you know it, you won't have a democracy anymore. Plato was probably not too far off the mark when he came up with that, and it has been in place repeatedly in Latin America. We don't want to proceed in that direction. The majority of the time, the difficulties caused by inflation led to the development of new leaders who make assurances that they will save the population and bring back prosperity. This is typically the path that dictators take to gain power. Our governments have been printing money hand over fist in recent years. The government takes advantage of low interest rates by borrowing heavily without raising taxes. Munger cautions that this is the fundamental issue with loose monetary policy, which is that the government loses its ability to exercise fiscal constraint. Not only do we have a significant problem, but the remedy to it, which is the easiest for politicians and the Federal Reserve to implement, is to simply print more money. This is how we will solve the temporary problems. Long-term risks are a natural consequence of the situation. We are aware of what transpired when the Weimar government of Germany in the 1920s continued to print more money. This ended up in governmental collapse and ultimately led to the rise of Hitler. This whole fiscal policy is fraught with risk. We don't want to have politicians doing whatever is simple, because even if it didn't affect us last time, that doesn't mean it won't this time. If there isn't any self-control involved in fiscal process, then you're going to put yourself in some precarious situations. However, Munger does not believe that Japan is in any kind of grave danger. He believes that we will not be able to handle our difficulties as effectively as Japan does, because they have already accomplished a significant amount of this and have survived. If there are no repercussions for the expenditure and debt of the government, then more of the same will be done for political advantage. The United States of America is not like Japan in any way, shape, or form. Hence, we should expect quite different results from our never-ending national debt and currency printing. The USA has been the primary driver of global economic expansion during the past century, and the effects of its current predicament could be felt all around the world. When the value of a currency's buying power, earnings power, and savings value are devalued by the government, there is a huge potential for political instability. Any strong personality who claims to solve all of the country's economic issues and is rewarded with fealty when he successfully does so can become the leader of a Western nation, which puts that nation at risk. His forecasts cover a lot more ground than just a fall in the stock market. They also highlight the perils of an economic collapse and the possibility of political unrest. Munger claims that if you examine the history of the Roman Republic, you will see that they engage in consistent currency inflation for a number of centuries. In the end, the Roman Empire as a whole was brought to its knees. Therefore, inflation represents the most significant threat to our society over the long term, second only to the possibility of nuclear war. Munger forecasts that within the next century, the value of the United States dollar will more than likely reach zero. This is not as absurd as it would first appear. Since the Federal Reserve was established, the value of one United States dollar has decreased by more than 96%. In addition, the value of the United States dollar has decreased by 86% just since 1971, when the United States abandoned the gold standard. On the basis of the patterns of declining purchasing power seen in the past, his prognosis is very close to becoming a certainty. This should serve as a wake-up call on the long-term threat that inflation poses to savings accounts that are not invested in assets. A significant number of his warnings focus on inflation and the political unrest that it brings about. Things aren't all doom and gloom. There is a potential of a recession, but there is also the possibility that certain variables can counter the recession. And there are measures that we can employ ourselves to preserve money in the event that the worst-case scenario occurs. Keep watching to find out how. Advantages of the modern world. Munger said that the last 100 years from 1922 to 2022 are fascinating. In fact, the previous 100 years before that also saw another large chunk of modernization. But before the 1800s, everything had been relatively the same for thousands of years. It was a rough and restricted existence. The past 2 centuries have brought quite a few advantages of modernization. Globalization. Bringing a country up to speed with other industrialized countries requires modernization. To collaborate with world leaders and progress globalization, it is crucial to regularly implement improvements. The majority of the population lives in cities and has some level of formal education. On a worldwide scale, education is the key to opening doors to improved job and business opportunities. Healthy lifestyle. Generally speaking, we are more aware of the importance of health and fitness thanks to the educational practices of the modern day. During times of crisis, people from developed countries are more likely to know how to take care of themselves physically and mentally because of an abundance of information and knowledge. Affordability of healthcare service availability. Today's society has both more accessible and more sophisticated medical care options at its disposal. The convenience of modern medicine and healthcare systems has resulted in an overall healthier population in developed nations. Many conveniences made possible by modern technology are not without their drawbacks, however, for both people and the environment. Dangerous drawbacks are linked to some of the primary problems that contribute to the cons of modernization. So what can we do? Spend wisely. Munger says that young people shouldn't waste money on flashy purchases. They quickly disappear. There is no permanent home for material possessions. When you see them in the store, they have that brand new gleaming appearance. When the packaging is broken open, however, they quickly begin to deteriorate. Something brand new is always just around the corner, with all new designs, looks, enhancements, and functions. Everything in our environment improves, from garments to automobiles to tools and kitchenware. And with the help of planned obsolescence, we can rest assured that our newest acquisition will be obsolete in no time. The more we shop, the more stress we put ourselves through. Nothing is more vulnerable to damage, deterioration, or theft than the material possessions we bring into our life. All of our material possessions need regular upkeep. Our Our possessions demand our undivided attention and effort. The spaces must be cleaned, organized, managed, and maintained. As a result, we tend to focus on them rather than the things that can actually improve our lives in the long run. Unknowingly, people are incurring greater costs with each transaction. Products are being bought with the hard-earned money from people's jobs. As Henry David Thoreau once said, "The price of anything is the quantity of life you exchange for it." Time is what we really trade for goods and services. Spend each day trying to be a little wiser than you were when you woke up, day by day, and at the end of the day, if you live long enough, like most people, you will get out of life what you deserve. Charles T. Munger. Recession may be inevitable, yes, and anything that can go wrong will go wrong. Although, that does not mean it will happen in the way which experts predict. It will never be the extreme worst-case scenario. One must stay vigilant if things are going smoothly, and always be reminded of the joys in life. We must maintain an equilibrium in all of our endeavors. If you want to learn about having a wealthy mindset, click the videos on the screen. Thanks for watching.